Sometimes it feels like no matter where I go or how hard I try to avoid it, artificial intelligence is everywhere. It's there to give you the wrong answer on Google, to suggest nonsensical video topics on YouTube, and worst of all, to annoy fans of Studio Ghibli. I don't know about you, but I've had just about my limit with this AI slop. Well, apparently Sense Games was able to, sense my frustration with this trend, because their debut game is appropriately named AI Limit, and it's a futuristic action-adventure game set in a post-apocalyptic world where everybody's fighting for power. Will it solve the impending AI problem that we're all facing? No, probably not. But man, it sure did feel good to smack around chainsaw-wielding robots. Come see what else I uncovered when I review AI Limit. In the future, after all the wars have been fought and humanity's greatest creations have been toppled, the few remaining survivors scavenge the once prosperous world for food and minerals. When a mysterious black mud begins to pour through the streets, along with it comes a new batch of monsters, forcing the survivors to swarm the last bastion of humanity, Havenswell. Our hero, a blonde-haired young woman with a green thumb and red arm, was born out of that mysterious black mud. Her name is Orissa, and she's a blader with immortality and a real penchant for slicing and dicing. She's here to explore the city ruins, uncover the truth, and ultimately find hope of a new life. Oh, and she's gonna need to nurse back to life a whole bunch of destroyed branches, which is where she'll upgrade her stats and her weapons. Yes, this is a game that was clearly inspired by Dark Souls and Elden Ring. Look, I know that people hate when critics compare every action-adventure to the type of games made famous by From Software, but the inspiration is obvious here. The good news here is that the game is more than a collection of familiar gameplay cliches, and even people who don't normally like this type of game or have tired of the imitators may find something to like about AI Limit. Right off the bat, there are a few things that really sucked me in. A big one of those is the post-apocalyptic setting and all the world building that the game is doing. We start the game with very little information, and the scraps we discover along the way are genuinely interesting. It forgoes the usual fantasy world or gothic setting for more recognizable cities, complete with cars and skyscrapers. The setting is just futuristic enough to feel foreign, yet not so much that it's hard to relate. Another thing I like, especially early on, is how every part of the city that we explore is controlled by a different type of creature. For example, the sewer that we start in are full of these mud monsters that scared away the humans, while the nearby graveyard is full of religious zealots with guns. And then, when we go deep into the toppled city, we come face to face with a robot army. And what's cool about all these different groups is that they don't all get along. There were so many times when I would just sit back and watch the monsters and the humans and the robots fight it out amongst themselves, all while collecting the experience points that comes from defeating your foes. It definitely helps that the different parts of the city are a lot of fun to explore. For the most part, the stage layouts are all pretty linear, usually with an obvious path that you should be taking. Thankfully, there are a whole bunch of side paths along the way to explore, which is usually where you can find all the best equipment and items. Sometimes you'll buy or find keys that'll open up even more parts of the stage, or even unlock shortcuts that'll help you if you need to fight through the level again. This, along with a varied mix of stage types and the level-specific enemies, will definitely keep you on your toes looking for new paths and shortcuts. Now, the reason you might need these shortcuts is because some of the levels can be a bit challenging, especially the first time you enter them. You may just need to avoid certain enemies or take them out individually, as it's never good when our hero is being swarmed from all sides. The good news is that she's a nimble little fighter who's good with a sword or whatever weapon you throw at her. She has both light and strong attacks, along with special moves and a magic spell that acts as a long-range strike. We get the usual roll move to avoid attacks, along with a shield, which you can use to parry and stun the opponents, assuming that you get the timing right. As a game that was inspired by Dark Souls, the goal is largely to travel from one resurrected branch to the next without dying. You'll find these different branches on the linear path, though they aren't always close together. The branches act as both a checkpoint and a place where you can spend the experience points that you've amassed. But you better watch out, because if you die, the game is going to deduct a percentage of your experience points. Oh, and just in case you're wondering, yes, resting at the branch resets all the enemies, and no, you don't have to go back and collect the dropped goodies when you die. It's worth noting that AI Limit does try to add a few new wrinkles to the formula, such as the seal system, which will let you add certain perks to our hero. The seal also controls the mud gauge, which is the thing that powers your magic, parries, and special abilities. While I will admit that it does sound like this adds a whole extra layer of complexity, it really isn't all that different from other games. I mean, even when the game does a crummy job of explaining why each new part of the game is important, I had no problem putting them to use. Everything else, like leveling up your character and enhancing your weapon, is intuitive and simple. That's also a good way to describe the combat. While I like being able to change the different types of shields and the spells are pretty cool, the basic combat is extremely straightforward. In other words, there's just not much to it. In fact, I killed most of the enemies in the game by simply mashing the light attack button. I will say that each section's enemies will start out challenging, but they usually drop better items, and more experience points allow you to quickly level up and enhance your sword, making them a whole lot more manageable. Plus, you'll quickly learn their patterns and be able to dodge or parry most of their attacks. Of course, all this is put to the test when you go up against the game's many bosses. These fights can initially feel hopeless, especially when you're going up against some of the more aggressive bosses that are constantly rushing at our hero. But like every other enemy in this game, the bosses have predictable attacks that you can parry to gain the upper hand. I also found that a few of them buckle the moment you get aggressive and just start rushing at them. There were a few surprisingly easy bosses that I could just trap in the corner and kill through button mashing. Even when you look beyond a few easy boss battles, the problem with these fights is they don't feel as big or epic as what you get from other Souls-like games. Even the biggest and nastiest foes are small and lame in comparison to what you got in both Dark Souls and Elden Ring. Part of the problem is that AI Limit simply doesn't have the budget of those AAA titles. But it's also that it doesn't have the style or the artistic eye. Unfortunately, that's true of the level designs as well. While some are ambitious and do a good job of world building, many are bland and look a little unpolished. A good example of that is the toppled city, which looks great from a distance, but once you get close to those demolished buses, you'll start to see how dated the graphics are. Speaking of being unpolished, the game is littered with technical issues. For example, I found that sometimes when I would try to teleport, Orisa would just disappear and I'd get stuck at the branch. I could still look around, but couldn't move or interact with anything. It also has loading problems. There were 2 different times when the game got stuck in an infinite loading screen. Now, let me tell you, I let it run for way longer than I should have, and it just never stopped rotating through the same few slides. I had to exit out of the game completely in order to just move on. That's annoying. But even though it's a little buggy and it never quite rises to the same heights as the other games in the genre, I'm still gonna recommend AI Limit. It's a fun game with an intriguing setting, good gameplay, well-crafted stage designs, and a compelling story that kept me going, even through some of the tougher sections. And even though she hasn't been a huge focus of this review, I also really liked Orisa as an action hero. I mean, look, it doesn't exactly break any new ground, but it's a fun action game with a likable lead, and sometimes that's enough. It's man versus machine versus monster in a post-apocalyptic fight for survival in AI Limit, a brand new action-adventure from first-time developer Sense Games. While it borrows liberally from the Dark Souls playbook, AI Limit finds its own voice with a compelling new hero and a whole bunch of world building. Sure, the combat is a bit simplistic and the bosses kinda suck, but the levels are fun to explore and I'm a big fan of the enemy designs. AI Limit may not be in the same league as Elden Ring, but it's an entertaining stopover as you wait for the next big adventure game. Hey, thanks for watching my review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite adventure game? It doesn't have to be one of these newfangled adventure games inspired by Dark Souls. It can be, well, pretty much everything. I mean, as long as it's an adventure, of course. I can't wait to see your picks in the comments below. Speaking of adventures, I'm currently working my way through Indiana Jones and the Great Circle on the PlayStation 5, so look for that review shortly. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.